It is that intimate relationship to the divine that you've breathed into your body, that is merging into the cells of your body and oxygenating you and rippling through your DNA. It is that kind of divine. That's where humanity is going.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Quantum Realms 2021. And today I'm so excited to welcome back, it's been a while since we've talked, Kerry K. And Kerry K talks to the Galactics, and we are here to talk to her about how she sees being human in 2021 may be different than in years past. Hi, Kerry. So nice to have you.
Hey, Candace, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I really am. I'm kind of on this health thing, and I've lost a little weight, and I'm pumping up my exercise, and I'm trying to infuse more life into my life, and so I'm doing great, and I'm just so happy to see you. How are you doing?
That's brilliant. I'm doing really good as well. It's peaceful in my world. It's very, very peaceful. Dealing with the same stuff that everybody else is, but that's not where my focus is. My focus is on the unprecedented and phenomenal light codes that are coming into the planet right now. And it can be at sometimes easy to get lost in all of the political stuff that's going on and all of the uncertainty and all of the unknown and all of the angst that goes with that. It's easy because it's right here. So we don't even have to look, you know? And when we enable ourselves that beautiful place, that beautiful pause moment, and we can acknowledge everything that's going on in front of us. It's never about denial. Acknowledge everything in front of you. And there is that beautiful pause moment. And in that pause, life begins to flourish and blossom and make sense again. Because there is no ways we can make sense of the world that's right in front of us. But when we take that pause moment and see beyond it, we fill ourselves up with the God spark. We fill ourselves up with our innate wisdom. We reconnect to the truth of who we are. And that is so connected to the work that I do. I support people in remembering the truth of who they are. You know, throughout my life, people have asked me that one question so consistently. What is my purpose? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? It's almost like everybody has this sense that if they could answer that one burning question, what is my purpose? That somehow their lives would make sense to them and they would have something other than futility, something other than a pointlessness, because it's easy. Just like I said earlier, you can look at the political stuff and go, well, that doesn't look very good. You can look at life as it is and go, well, that doesn't look terribly exciting. So we want this going beyond, and we want this sense of purpose. So throughout many, many years, the same question got asked: why am I here? What's my purpose? And I found, regardless of who I was speaking to, and regardless of what their purpose actually was, there was one common purpose for everybody. And I began to notice this. It really took a while. I began to see the common thread, and I realized the common thread for everybody is to remember who they are. And at that point of remembering the truth, that innate, quiet, but profound and magnificent truth, at that point, life makes sense, you make sense, the world makes sense, and purpose occurs. Because now you remember not necessarily the intricate details. That's not what is meant by remember who you are. What is meant by remember who you are is connect with that innate essence of self. Because even if you cannot name it, even if you cannot come close to articulating what this innate self is saying to you, if you can tune into what it feels like, that's the elixir of life. That's the golden remedy that everybody's after. It's tuning into and aligning yourself with that exquisite peace that occurs when you connect to that innate essence self. And then there's a cellular memory. There's a cellular awakening that happens. And it's almost, if your cells could speak, they would say, oh, I remember this feeling of being who I am. Because so many of us came into this world, and as we came into planet Earth, we came into amnesia, we came into chaos, we came into forgetfulness. And that's a painful, and I think we underestimate how painful that experience of forgetting is. We underestimate it because we kind of learn throughout life, oh, this is normal and this is just the way it is for everybody. But it's highly abnormal. It's highly abnormal to be separated from our own consciousness. Because that's really what happens when we forget. We become separate to ourselves. So the process of remembering who we are is regaining who we are. And then I do have to laugh because I can be a bit dense, Candace. It did take me probably 5 years to find the common golden thread that was always there throughout every interaction I had with people. And it was this conversation around purpose. So 5 years, being a bit dense, it finally clicked. Humanity is here to re-engage with that innate essence self. And when that happens, purpose happens. And when that happens, alignment to the universe happens, and you are literally walking an elevated path. The path that you were on, which may have been filled with, how do I get there? And what am I doing? And what is all the questions, all the questions that come from the linearity of our brain, they stop being asked. It's not like they even get answered. They just stop being asked because they become irrelevant. The relevance becomes, I've found me. So that's where I am in my world. I am in that place of seeing the bigger picture, of remembering that we are here to remember, and that it's that simple, not to overcomplicate it.
And this is why I guess we often talk about being quiet and meditate, having time to ponder. I really started noticing, Kerry, how society tries very hard, more now than ever, to ever allow one a quiet moment. In public places where we're allowed to go anymore. But even at places, where it really struck me, and I almost cried the first time this happened, when I went to the gas station or the petrol station. I went to fill up my vehicle, and it was the first time I landed there where there was a screen that popped up and ads started coming and songs and stuff, like right there on the fuel pump. And that's when I just stopped and I stared at that and I went, I can't even do this without being barraged with the programming that, I don't know, do you agree that so much of that programming is kept or is created to keep us from remembering who we are? And why would anyone do that?
If humanity doesn't remember who they are, they will never become autonomous. They will never become sovereign. They will be easy to control. It's just a simple equation. And we could make it about sinister forces on this planet and say, oh, they're the bad guys. And just, for me, that's never been a focal point. It is what it is. And that's not even what I'm here to address. What I'm here to address is the consciousness of humanity, of each one of us. And so, yes, we can see all sorts of malevolent plans because, again, they're so easy to see. But not to get entangled in, to go beyond those plans. And to recognize, like you were talking about now, why is there this bombardment this chaotic bombardment. It's EMFs, it's all the radio frequencies, it's your cell phone, it's the cell phone of the people in your vicinity. It's just an ongoing, energetic, non-stop, chaotic bombardment in order to hopefully create dis-ease for the human mind and body, purely to serve an agenda, but it's not our agenda. So our agenda is to do the opposite, which is to create peace and to create stillness and to create ease and to create all things conducive to life and to the flow of the universe. So it becomes kind of easy when you recognize, oh, there's bombardment. You can either go into resistance, which I've fallen victim to. I want to use the word victim. I've fallen victim to that before, where I've wanted to shout at people, God, could you just keep quiet? My neighbors are making a noise. People are driving their cars, and I can hear the radio station in somebody's car from my house, and I'm not even close to the road. So how loud must it be? There's a part of me that's wanted to argue that and wanted to kind of make people aware, and that's just a waste of time, because we can go beyond that. We can recognize that there is turmoil, there is chaos, there is all of that. It just is. But we don't have to be reliant on external silence in order to find our inner silence. We don't have to be reliant on external peace for us to create inner peace. In fact, we almost learn a level of mastery when we get to attain silence and get to attain presence and peace, whilst in the soup of all of this onslaught. You know, I had a client, Candace, this is such a funny story. I had a client many years ago, and he says to me, I'm going to India. It's my lifelong dream, bucket list thing. Him and his wife, they were a retired couple, and they were going to go to India to meditate. And off he goes. And you can just imagine, he says, from the airport, they take this taxi and it takes them to the ashram. And he's seen in the brochure, you know, all these pictures of the ashram, looks beautiful, except for the fact that the ashram is right on the highway. And he says, there are cows walking past, there are cars, there is, you know, this horrific onslaught of noise. And he says, it just doesn't stop. And he says, what? This is the ashram. So he feels angered and betrayed and ripped off and all of these things. And he's booking the next flight out of there. And thankfully, before he could leave, somebody in the ashram said to him, if you can meditate here, you can meditate anywhere. And so he did. He stayed, thankfully. And he said in the end, he could sit right on the porch. He showed me a picture of it. There's this outside balcony porch type thing. And you can literally see this highway. And he said he attained the most blissful, deepest, peaceful meditations in his life ever, right there in that ashram, bordering on this crazy, chaotic highway. And so it requires a level of mastery from us, and that's who we are. And we forgot that, but it is who we are. We are masters that have come to this planet in order to remember who we are as masters, so that we can reclaim and re-embody and reignite that essence of self, which becomes a ripple that awakens everybody else. So of course we get to do it in all of this chaos and all of this noise and all of this distraction. There is no better place to find focus than putting yourself in this distraction. So people will sometimes say to me, Kerry, I'd love to come to one of your meditations, because I do these events that are like a meditation, and it's deeper. It's not just a meditation, it's an activation. It's a full body activation experience. And they say to me, but I can't, because, you know, my kids are going to be there and there's going to be noise and da, 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 da. You can guess what I say to them. I say to them, then all the more reason that you should come, so that you can let all the noise be there. Just let it be there. Don't get angry with it. Don't get angry with your kids for making a noise. Let them make the noise. Find your own stillness. So this is who we are in this world. We're masterful beings. And on that note of all of the distractions and all of this bombardment of energy and noise and sound and frequency, do you know that every single year, they have to up the ante. They have to increase it exponentially. Think of how much it took to distract you 10 years ago and how much it takes to distract you now. It keeps increasing because we keep becoming more masterful. So they've got to keep those who have these vested interests in controlling society, they've got to keep working harder and harder and harder to do that. So it's huge testament to our ascension that I think people don't necessarily see. You know, we're getting a lot right. When it looks like there's so much that's supposedly wrong, we need to remind ourselves that we really are getting a lot right, because we're not easy to control. We're not easy to dumb down. We're not easy to disengage from our hearts. We're just not. We're hard work. Rightly so.
Beautiful. Gosh, I love that. So a couple of things while you were talking. First off, this idea, what is it so much of us are pissed off about when we get pissed off is the controllers, the controllers. And yet you just finished talking about how when we're looking for the peace, we want to control others around us or we want to do our own kind of control. And maybe if you can kind of recognize that there's something there. But I also wanted you to get real woo-woo with us about these light codes, because they are figuring in to a lot of people's dreams, experiences, other things that are happening in sessions and such. How have they changed in this last year or so, or the first year? And how do you know? And what's your experience? And what can you talk about there?
Oh, a lot. So let's understand what light codes are, because it does sound woo-woo. Light codes, what is this? It's photonic light that's entering our planet. Now, from a purely scientific perspective, because perhaps there will be people out there who want to understand the nuts and the bolts on the ground level of what does this mean and how do these light codes get here and why are they getting here? So when we look at planet Earth, imagine that you were looking at a picture of Earth in space. So Earth is surrounded by a magnetic field, always has been, because without the magnetic field of Earth, Earth has no safety blanket, and Earth has very little protection then from cosmic rays. So there is this thing called cosmic rays, and there is this thing called solar wind. And what that is all of the energy from the so-called vacuum of space that surrounds us. Now, normally, due to this very strengthened magnetic field, normally most of it is buffered right off of us. It bounces right off of us. Except for what's been happening, and for those who are researchers, go and research this, Earth's magnetic field is shrinking exponentially. And it has been shrinking for the last couple of years, but over the last 20 years, we've seen that every single year of the last 20 years, that magnetic shield or field around the planet is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which means that more of that light, more of that photonic influence, the solar winds, the cosmic rays, is now not bouncing off the planet, but is penetrating the planet. And if it penetrates the planet, it penetrates us, because we are a part of this living organism that we call our home, albeit a temporary home. This is our home right now. Your body is a part of the planet. So when the planet experiences an uptick in photonic light, so does your body. So these are the light codes that we're talking about. So I had a client and I explained this to her, and you know what she said to me? She said, oh, so these are like space particles. And I said, well, okay, I wouldn't have used those words, but it's a nice way to look at it. Space particles. Okay. So in her mind, I think that she was imagining a particle from the sun, perhaps, which, is really what solar wind is. It's the plasma ejections that reach our planet. And yeah, that's a way of understanding that we're not separate to the space around us, to the literal cosmic field around us. We are not separate, but we have been buffered for many, many, many years. And that buffering is smaller and smaller and smaller. It's not non-existent, it's just a lot smaller and weaker. And as a result, we've got more of this cosmic light that's entering our physical body. So it's in the air that we breathe, and it influences everything from the thoughts that we think, because suddenly we have this cosmic influence. So for some people, they use this terminology, they talk about ascension fatigues, they talk about ascension symptoms, which is nothing more than the body's response to this uptick in energy. So some people can become very emotional, and some people on a physical level, the body starts to do different things and it can start to go into pain. And people who've got heart disease and people who have mental illness in particular, there's many, many scientific studies, and I find this very interesting. There's many scientific studies that have shown that at a time of huge solar wind, people who've got mental illness and people who've got heart problems tend to have exacerbation of their symptoms. And it's so interesting. If you look at graphs that show you there's a whole lot of people having heart attacks, and doctors first started noticing all the heart attacks would happen at once. What's going on? It took many years to discover that there's a correlation between these light codes that come in, because what they do is they're trying to align your body to your cosmic self. And anything that's a blockage, anything that's in the way of you and that essence self that I spoke about in the beginning, the you that needs to remember who you are, anything that is blocking you from that needs to be cleared. And sometimes the clearing happens almost aggressively, almost too quickly for the physical body to handle. And in those instances, people can sometimes get sick. People can sometimes experience a mental break. They can experience all sorts of symptoms that seem very out of character for them. So these are the light codes. This is the woo-woo stuff, which isn't woo-woo at all. This is actually the stuff that science is holding right in front of us to see. And when we look at it, we realize that there is this wonderful bridge between science and spirituality. They do merge. They really, really do, if we have the eyes to see it. So was that your question? What are the light codes?
It was. I just wanted to
Good.
a little bit more. Beautiful explanation. I have this idea, and maybe it's because I'm thinking of myself when I first started looking into all of this kind of stuff. Much of what was presented to me, I approached as an intellectual and mental construct and exercise. And what, of course, I've learned after really being in it for 21 or so years is it's not really that. But there are, bless them, the people who are just starting to ask questions and waking up to all of this. I think about these people a lot, and I think about some of the words we use and some of the phrases that we use. And rather than having them go down a very long road of thinking that this is an intellectual problem put in front of them, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more, how do we know when we remember who we are? And maybe if it's appropriate, do you remember the moment that you remembered? Was there a moment that you remembered where you were? Can you share anything like that? Other stories of people, like when they went, oh, now, aha moment?
That aha moment is the moment that the left brain stops interjecting. that's when it happens. And across the board for everybody, they will, in their own words and in their own very, very different ways, describe the same experience. And it seems like an anomalous experience. Like, what caused the lights to go on for me, a person might say, what caused this to happen when I was searching and searching and searching and searching, and then it was never available until one day, boom, the lights just came on. So for me personally, it was a boom, it was a lights just came on kind of a moment where I'd always been spiritual. I'd always had a connection to the divine. That was there. But the deepening of that journey where the lights came on in the most profound way for me was through hardship and pain and struggle and difficulty. And please God, may others realize that we don't have to use struggle and difficulty as the catalyst, but I chose the hard road. And through the hard road, I reached a point which some would call the dark night of the soul, which refers to a time in life where it just gets really difficult, where you're bombarded by life and chaos and challenges from every direction, and it seems very hopeless, and it seems that despair is all you've got to run on. And that experience for me was my awakening, because in that moment, well, it wasn't a moment, it was an accumulation of many years that led me to a moment. I remember meditating and closing my eyes, Candice, and when I did, I was in a darkened room. But the state of being that I was in was one of like, oh, I just surrender. It's just, when you say, I can't do this anymore. I'm so done with the way life has been. I'm so done. And I don't know yet another way. All I know is I am so complete. I don't have it in me to go through another day with how things were and who I was. Something has to shift. And again, you don't need to know what it is. Because that searching of the linear left mind, the linear left brain rather, that says, but what is it and where is it and how is it, and trying to kind of analyze it into place, it's that slows everything down. When you get to a place, which in my case, like I said, was through hardship, of just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't even use the words, I'm surrendering. But that was the energy that I was in. It was just like, dear God, show me the way. Just show me. Just open the path to me. That was inside of me. And the next thing I remember was feeling so angry that somebody had turned the lights on because I was meditating in a dark room. So I opened my eyes, in shock and horror and outrage to see who is this inconsiderate person that's walked into the room and put the lights on, except the lights were not on. Yet it was blindingly bright for me. It was like that shock when somebody just puts the lights on and you're so used to the dark. So I open my eyes and it's dark, and I close my eyes and it's light, and I open and it's dark, and I close and it's light, and I'm thinking, what just happened? Except then I start feeling bliss, and I start feeling this emotional release, and I start feeling heaven. There is no other word that I could really use to describe that state of being except to tell you that was heaven. That's where everything just became light. I later learned that my pineal gland was what caused that flash of light. I later learned that that was the awakening moment for me, but that was my aha. Now, different people are obviously going to have different stories for you, but the commonality is it is either through willingness or through hardship. One of those two things where we drop the linear left brain's analytical question, and we reach for something beyond that, which is unknown to us. Because a very left brain person is going to go, okay, what's beyond that? What's beyond my brain? Tell me what that is. How do I get there? How do I know when I'm there? That's all the left brain conversation. So you're having an aha moment when you can't even describe in words There are no words. There are no thoughts. There are no questions. It is just a pure blissful presence without any inner thinking or inner chatter whatsoever. So I learned that it is the analytical left brain that we have mistaken for our identity. That's why we find it so hard to switch it off, because we say I, and we answer to a name, whatever your name is, and we ascribe these words, the name and the me and the I, to what? To who? Who are you describing when you say me? Who are you describing? What part of you are you describing? For most of us, without realizing it, we're describing the left brain. And when I realized that, I was sad. I was sad. I was shocked. I was in turmoil. That was a slap in the face. That was a very cold, hard slap in the face. But it made sense. It resonated. I could feel the truth of it. It sunk into place for me. And throughout my life, I've been guided by galactic beings. And the galactics are so patient, Candace. They don't come to you and say, now listen, this is how it is. They just let you, and they usher you and guide you as much as you can. They let you find your way. So the galactics had told me over and over again throughout my life, they had told me, drop the linearity, drop the logic, drop the questions. And I would always answer them with another question. How do I do that? Why do you want me to do that? And, I can just imagine, oh God, here we go again from them. It must have been incredibly tiring, but that's just where I was, until my breakthrough, which was really a breaking out of the linear left brain. That's what it was. And that's what it is. That's how you know when you're there. When I say to a client, how do you feel? What are you feeling right now? And they can't answer, not because they don't know, but because it's too big to name. It's too perfect and pure. It's too everything. And that's, funny enough, often a word that people will say when I say, how do you feel right now? What do you feel right now? Very often they'll say, I feel, and they're searching for the word and they say everything. But I can hear the peace in them. I can feel, I can see the shift in them. So you know that you're there when the chatter stops, the questions stop, and you're just centered in a higher state of being. And to get there, like I said, for me it was hardship, but that's not how it needs to be or how it's supposed to be for us. We don't have to grow through hardship. We can grow through ease, and we can grow through conscious choice. But the conscious choice is, if I recognize, and it's a daring thing to do, if I recognize the false self is the brain who's hijacked the identity, who's in a sense hijacked the show and running the ship and has said, okay, I'm in charge now. When we can recognize the false self, not as something evil, not as something bad, not as something to shame, not as something to blame, when we can recognize that's what it takes to be human in 3D on planet Earth. That's what we were born into. We knew it was going to be that way. And then we dare to go beyond the false self into this idea that says, beyond my false self, even if I can't reach it, even if I can't attune to it, there is a true self. And to bring or to elicit a curiosity that says, I wonder what that feels like. I wonder what the true self feels like. I wonder what that would be like to connect to the true self. And you know what, just in the wondering, just in the reaching for the true self begins to align itself to you and you to it, because now your awareness is expanding to include the true self. And that's a beautiful starting place, to acknowledge that there is a false self and there is a true self. Neither is good, bad, right, wrong. It's just facets of our persona and facets of how we express ourselves in this world. But they're both available to us. And you know that you're in the true self. Like I said, just here's a beautiful analogy. I used this analogy on, it was one of my YouTube videos. I hadn't even thought about how I was going to describe, I think it was forgiveness I was talking about, and I wasn't sure how I was going to describe it. And I just suddenly had this concept, and I heard myself saying these words, and as I did, I thought, wow, Kerry, that was really good. I said, if you eat a strawberry, you're not going to say to me, Kerry, am I eating the strawberry? Like, am I doing it? Is this it? Because you know you're eating the strawberry, you can taste it, and it's in you, it's in your being, and you're connected to it. You can smell it and taste it and touch it. It's a real experience. And this is what we very often do with emotions. We'll say, am I forgiving? Is this it? Have I done it? Or am I connecting with my true self? Is this it? Am I doing it? If it's a question, the answer is no. It's like the strawberry. You just know that you're eating a strawberry, and you would never think to question, because the experience is so real. It's not a thought. The strawberry is not a thought. It's an experience. So when you use that equation and you say, can I taste this and know with absolute certainty that this is happening, then it's happening. But am I questioning? No, then it's not happening. Then you're in your brain. And that's also an okay place to be. It's just to acknowledge the two.
Difference. You know, I've been pondering an awful lot, Kerry, even before last year, but certainly after last year.
Mm-hmm.
Often talk about individuals going through the things. Of course, individual life, even two people who live in the same house have sometimes very different kinds of realities going on. I understand that. But I've been thinking an awful lot about human beings collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were talking about, you know, the pineal gland being, you know, set free, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about the collective human experience about being on the planet, and especially this last year. And there's a part of me that feels as if, you know, we experience things on an individual level, then we experience things on a family level, and we experience things in a community level. But I really think humanity as one organism experiences some form of reality as well.
Mm.
As humanity is hopefully really getting to be where they're waking up to that beautiful light. I loved your story. Who turned the light on? You know, hopefully the light for humanity is turning on. You know, I started imagining a collective human pineal gland or something, if
Yeah.
you know, focusing on that. But I guess my question for you is, and I wonder if you could touch upon it a little bit, this idea of humanity itself going through some sort of awakening, not individual awakening, but this, because
Yeah.
that's what it seems like must be happening. I mean, it just must be. And how does being in that collective awakening process differ for somebody who's maybe already awakened to the truth of who they are, and those of us who really aren't there yet? It must be different. And how is
Yeah.
it different? And what do you think about that?
So how it's different, let me answer that first, because how it's different for those who are awakened, what that terminology even means is that there is something in the body that is switched on that other bodies don't yet have access to. And it is a higher heart, it is a higher mind that certain bodies are able to attune to. And mostly that's got to do with a choice that you made prior to this incarnation. And the people who are listening to this, these are the people who are those switched on ones. They are those masterful beings, even if they don't remember or realize that these are the ones that hold the capacity for that higher heart, higher mind expansion. And it is a literal energetic center in the body that I refer to when I talk about the higher heart and the higher mind. That's what, when we say, oh, I'm awakened or somebody else is awakened, that's what we're talking about. It's not a better than, it's just a choice to be an example before everybody else gets themselves switched on, because that's what's happening collectively. Collectively, humanity is awakening. And as that collective awakening happens, it begins by individuals within the collective switching on, turning on, the higher heart, higher mind becoming activated. They become examples which ripple throughout the fabric of this collective, and the collective is stirred every time one among them awakens, because that awakening is like an electric shock. Some people say, oh, it's a numbers game. They say, oh, there's less of us and more of them, which is not true in the least. But what they're implying is that spiritually so-called awakened people are fewer in number. Now, if that were true, it still wouldn't matter, because even if we were fewer in number, we're higher in resonance, higher in frequency. This is not a numbers game. This is about an elevation of consciousness and how elevated that consciousness can be. So it could be 100 people. 100 people could affect millions of people by their vibratory frequency. Not because they're saying, oh, I want to change you, but simply because they're being the truth of who they are, with these energetic centers switched on inside of them, which comes from being more connected to self, more in tune with self, more compassionate with self, more honoring with self. It is, in the beginning, about a way of treating self that is elevated. And then through that elevation in the way that we treat and connect to the self, we begin to treat and connect to others in that same elevated way. So these people who are so-called awakened, and I say so-called awakened because I don't like the idea that some people walk around going, I'm awakened. That makes me special, There's no specialness. There's just, this is what you chose. You chose to be activated before the main group, before the collective, for one reason and one reason only. And that is to be an example to others, to be a ripple that becomes an awakening for somebody else. So it's the bodies who were most able to maintain these higher frequencies, these light codes that we spoke about earlier. They are the ones that are the individuals within the collective that eventually transform the collective. So what are we doing collectively? We're awakening. Collectively, humanity is remembering, oh, wow, I'm more than I think I am. I'm more than I thought I was. I am way more evolved. I am way more sacred. I am way more powerful and potent and divine. Truly divine in the truest sense of the word. I'm not talking about going shopping and saying, oh, that skirt is divine. It's not that divine. It's the divine of source consciousness pulsing through your veins, and you know it. It is that intimate relationship to the divine that you've breathed into your body, that is merging into the cells of your body and oxygenating you and rippling through your DNA. It is that kind of divine. That's where humanity is going. They are remembering that they are masterful. They are remembering that they are God beings. But in the remembering, there is the identification of the false self, which is what we spoke about earlier. I can see the false self. And that's right now, that's what's coming up for humanity, is can you see the false self? And Yes, the answer is yes, they can, but no, they don't want to. They can see, and I'm talking about the collective, not the individuals. The collective is going, yes, I can see what's in front of me, but no, I don't want to. And over time, that's going to change. Because that same question asked 6 months ago would have been, no, I can't see the false self. This is who I am. This that you call the false self, this is the truth of me. Now they can say, yes, I can see the false self, but I don't want to. And that's going to become, yes, I can see the false self. The but I don't want to is going to evaporate over the next couple of weeks, 6 weeks to 3 months. And then we're ready for the next level. And the next level is, yes, I can see the full self. And I'm becoming aware that there's also a true self. And then that becomes, I can feel that, I can see the true self, I can feel the true self, I can embody the true self, the awakening happens. And that takes place between now and 2023. That divine awakening of the collective, which for some people is unfathomable. For some people, they're looking at how dead asleep some beings are and saying, yeah, but that person's never going to wake up. You know, I get people saying to me, my husband, my wife, my next door neighbor, my son, my daughter, they're never going to get it. They're convinced, they say, they're never going to get it. This is not about what the mind knows. This has got nothing to do with the brain, nothing to do with the analytical process. This has got to do with what a person feels like on the inside in a place that can't even be articulated with words. That's where the shift is taking place. And do not be surprised if all those people that may have been judged as being sleeping and never gonna get it and all of those things, don't be surprised if those people in the blink of an eye awaken. Don't be surprised if those beings surprise you, the ones that you say will never get it, if they surprise you, and when they do get it, they're going to step into a level of mastery that could be beyond where you are right now. So collectively, it's very exciting. Looking at humanity as one thing, as one collective, beautiful. What they're doing is losing themselves so that they can find themselves, and they're losing themselves in the best way that humanity knows how. Humanity does things properly. That's what we do. We don't do things half measure. We do all or we do nothing. And sometimes it's all and nothing. That's just what it is to be human. We experience polarities. So seeing this endeavor of the collective is the most heartwarming thing, because every single one of them, whether they know it or not, every single one of them is trying and doing their best right now. You could look at that and you could say, well, your best isn't good enough and your best isn't very good. They're doing their level best with what they know, with their blockages, with their fears, with their misinformation and disinformation. They're doing the best that they can right now, but never underestimate the sleeping masses, because they will awaken en masse as deeply as they are sleeping right now. The equal opposite of their awakening, their potential for awakening, is what we're going to see. Because that's how humanity rolls. All or nothing, asleep or awake. That's what we're going to see.
I love you've come to this interview here as we're wrapping things up, because that's just so exciting. And when we talk about this idea of being here at this very exciting time on the planet, and that we've all chosen to be here now, it's to witness this, because you know, we've all had moments of joy and elation, you know, the birth of a grandchild, and the moment of a wedding kiss, you know, all of those amazing things that we as humans might have enjoyed in our life. For me, one of the first was getting a pony. I mean, I was 8. Can you believe it, Kerry? I was 8. And do you know what I thought when I got on that pony? And I was so happy to get on that pony. Oh my God, I've waited my entire life for this. I was 8.
For an 8-year-old, that's a long time.
It certainly was. It seemed like it was. But as you're talking about the sleeping masses awakening, and my imagination was taking them and filling in the blanks and creating what that might look like, I felt this elation coming up in already. What a party we'll have when that happens, won't we?
It'll be a reunion. It'll be a family reunion unlike anything you've ever known. Because it will be not just, I remember who I am. It'll be, I remember who you are. And I see you for you. And to be seen for who you are, nothing is more spectacular than that. And to see another and remember them beyond this lifetime. To remember the essence of them and to go, oh, I suddenly remember you. That's where we're going. That's the celebration. And that's where humanity excels. Because for all of their so-called failings, which aren't failings in the least, for all of their failings, humanity can love in honestly the most powerful, pure way. When left to their own devices, humanity has an ability to care, to truly care, to be kind. That's innate. It's been manipulated out of us. But as we rekindle the divine flame of who we are and start relating to each other out in the open with that love, with that care, with that compassion for strangers, for loved ones, for the animals, for the trees. That's the society that we're creating. That's why we came here. To wake up so that we could wake up the rest of them. That's it, because we remember the potential of these humans. We remember that they are love. Pure and simple, they are love. And when they remember that they're love and they enact that love, it's exquisite. It's truly beautiful. And then it's all worth it. And then we're going to go, oh, I'm so sorry I caused you pain. I'm so sorry I caused you this heartache. And we're going to go, don't even mention it. No apology needed. Because I remember who you are now. I remember who I am now. This isn't even going to be, we now have a journey of forgiveness to go. No, this is going to be just returning to love without anything in the way. That's where humanity's going.
That's a beautiful a journey of love with that. When I was 4 years old, I wasn't even 4. I think I was it was before I was 4, right as I was 4. I remember playing outside my family home just in the dirt. And I was playing with, I think, pine needles under some pine trees. And I was making little huts and just playing all by myself. And I remember sort of thinking of myself as I'm making a little world down here, just like God may have made the world. And I thought that was an interesting concept. And then I had this idea it was almost like a presence. Something came through my head and said, yeah, but you need to remember. You need to remember. And I was barely 4. And I remember thinking, I've heard that before. I keep hearing that. Remember. But even at 4, I tried to answer that question logically. And logically, I answered it this way. Truly, I'm only 4. What is it I could possibly need to remember? I'm only 4. there can't be really anything important that could have happened in my other 3 years that I had. It took another 40 years to pass before I got to the place where I could even comprehend some of the things we were talking about today. So talking to you about remembering who we are, Kerry K, has been a
Yeah.
fabulous and blissful experience.
Beautiful. Thank you, Candace. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me back to talk to you. It's really beautiful.
You're so welcome. Well, I know that you hold classes and events and gatherings for people to help them on this journey of remembering who they are. Please let everyone know how they can find you.
kerryk.net. That's that easy. My website is kerryk.net. The easiest way to connect with me is on Patreon, and there's a group in my Patreon community called the Plasma Tier, and it's called Plasma for a reason. The stuff that comes from the sun is plasma that echoes into the earth and into our bodies. It's plasma. So the plasma tier in my Patreon community, I connect with them every Friday and we do a live call with each other. And those live calls, they're pretty life-changing. That's probably the best way for people if they want to interact with me to do it. But if you go to my website and check out what's there, you might find something else that you fancy. But that's as easy as it is, kerryk.net.
Well, thank you, Kerry K. Galactics as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Lots of love.
Okay. All right. Well, stay tuned to the next episode of Quantum Realms 2021. Till next time. Bye for now.